Welcome back, everyone, to another great episode of The Human Role. As mentioned last week, we have another amazing guest. We have Holly Larson, who is heavy in the HR tech space with a strong expertise on benefit strategy, HR technology, human resources in general, but also learning and development and project management. So the whole shebang, you guys. Today, we're going to get into kind of like benefit side of things, a lot of like inflation concerns. I know that I've heard from some of my colleagues, and really just how that's kind of affecting the negotiation phase we're kind of in right now before open enrollment comes, but then also how that ties back into our HR technology space. So, Holly, thank you so much for being here today. Great to have you. I know that we went through one of our great colleague, Leah Joyner, but for others who don't know your background or maybe seeing you and hearing your name for the first time, wanted to allow the floor, have you kind of just give your experience and expertise to everyone, and then we will get into the nitty-gritty, you guys, of all the good stuff.
Thank you for the kind words and allowing me to be here today. My name is Holly Larson. I am an HR technology consultant with USI. I've been doing the consulting side of the business for about 7 years. Prior to that, I was on the vendor side of the business. So over 20 years experience working with HR technology vendors, names you're probably familiar with, and some you may not be, but ADP, iSolved, Dayforce, Benefit Focus, Empyrean, were some of the vendors I worked with. I also worked with a analyst firm at one point, which is now part of Gartner. So bring a little bit of a different lens to the consulting side. Did not come up from the broker path like a lot of my colleagues have, but I also did work for a subsidiary of Liberty Mutual. So definitely have a flavor of the insurance side and understand the importance of benefits.
Great experience. I always say, like, even on the payroll side, we talk a lot about how a lot of us just get thrown into things. So great to hear that even on your end, you didn't follow the normal path from being a broker and getting into your role. So good thing. So you guys, there is definitely different avenues, right, to get to where you want to be in life. So don't feel like you have to take the norm. I think Holly's another example of how you can still be successful kind of going against the norm.
Yeah, what I did do today did not exist when I started my career. So there's always new things out there. In fact, I sold payroll. That was at ADP years and years ago. So, absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of your role not existing when you first started, right? Kind of similar to what we're experiencing now as we get into the multi-generational workforce, right? So let's get into first kind of question I wanted to pick your brain on. Being that we have so many different generations in the workforce, how are you seeing employers adapting their benefit strategies to meet the needs of a more diverse, culture within our industry?
The first thing I would say on that is really the financial wellness is a benefit that we're seeing that is appealing across generations because you've got, with multiple generations in the workforce, financial wellness is important because you've got your younger workers that are trying to deal with their student loan debt. Or maybe you have someone that's a little bit further along and they're having families, right? So they've got those, okay, we've got, kids in school and we got to start saving for college. Then you've got folks that are ready for retirement and they're dealing with that Medicare for the first time or preparing for that. And that is a whole new world, different benefits available to them. Should I retire? Should I take that? What is this part B, part C, part D? It's very confusing. So you've got that whole financial wellness and it is something across, definitely multi-generational. The other thing is their communication strategy. Interestingly enough, the youngest people in your workforce and the older people in your workforce still want print or be able to print it out. Because a lot of times your younger people be enrolling in benefits for the first time and they don't know what a plan design is. They don't know what that means. And your older folks want to, they want to look at it. They want to see it. They want to take notes. So, that's okay because that's how we learn. There's a physiological connection between writing and remembering. So it's helpful for them. So those are some of the things that we're seeing across the board.
I guess I never thought about the younger generation still wanting paper, but that is very true, right? They're still learning. Hopefully they're asking the right questions, especially if they're newly getting off of like their parents' plan, So that's interesting to kind of understand that, look, there's both sides of the spectrum, definitely want the same thing, but essentially for different reasons, right? Like when you're older, you're actually paying attention to what your benefits do have because you actually may need to use them. When you're younger, it's like you're just trying to understand and you might not be certain if you're going to use it or not.
They may want to take it to their parents' house, right? And say,
Yeah.
hey, what does this mean? Help me figure this out.
Great bonding experience with the parents too as we get older. But okay, so let's get into inflation. We're all being impacted by the costs increasing, and I'm sure naturally, just like everything going up, I'm seeing it on my side across any different thing that I have a membership with. So I know it's going to hit us when it comes to the benefits cost. What are some most common concerns that you're seeing from your clients with their benefits and just a worry of increase of costs and how that's going to affect their population?
So I look at it from two sides, one from the benefits themselves, and then maybe from an HR tech side. So when you look at the benefits, the biggest area is that rising cost of pharmacy, right? We've all seen that as consumers, but certainly employers are looking out for that. That is their biggest. When you look at their healthcare spend, that's it, right? You've got the biologics, you've got all these things going on. And anybody who has a chronic illness, that's certainly impacting them. So those are way more expensive than the average cost of living increases. So healthcare in general is higher than that, but pharmacy is the biggest contributor to that. It's 4 or 5 times everything else. So that is one area that is a strategy that we can help our clients get that under control. Are they a member of a pricing group? What does that mean? What are you paying for that? So transparency among pharmacy spend is an area. And then just fee transparency across getting access to affordable care. And what does that fee look like? So, for example, I can give one of my own. Earlier this year, I needed to go get a chest X-ray. Where I was recommended to go was part of the system that my primary care was a group. And I was like, okay, let me call my healthcare advocate. And they said, okay, well, you can go there, but it's going to cost $450 for a single view chest X-ray. And I was like, oh, no, 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 that does not make sense to me. Where else is available? Well, if you drive 10 minutes further, it will be $115. I go, sold, $115. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say this, look, make sure you're understanding the in network, out of network. I've definitely had, yeah.
Oh, there is network.
And see, yeah, good thing Holly called ahead of time, right, you guys? So take note of this too. You don't just want to jump in. I understand things can be an emergency, right? That happens. I've had that happen to employees as well. And then they get the bill a month later and they're in my office screaming, right? But it's good that you took the time to call. And these are things that we really need to factor in and take a note of like, okay, maybe you should take some time to sit down and plan ahead in case of an emergency, right? So that you're not just scrambling last minute and having to go anywhere and then getting a bill later. So that's a really great example.
Right. And on the HR tech side, we're definitely seeing some inflation on the technology side. And there's a few reasons for this. The pandemic wasn't that long ago, but it really changed things from an HR tech perspective. A lot of companies that did not have benefits administration solutions suddenly needed them. Suddenly you had people taking leave because they were impacted by COVID, and then they came back on. So we had all these different things. And so HR tech providers and vendors kept prices artificially low to help. That was their contribution in a way. A lot of people left the workforce, as we know, started their own gig, or just said, you know what, I'm out. I'm going to retire. I'm at the end of my career anyway. Whatever happened, or they moved to a different employer. They're doing something else now. So we had all of that. So prices were kept artificially low. Now we've been seeing them gradually increase. Last year's Sapient Insight survey said they anticipated that the fees in 2025 would be 7 to 9% increase over last year. We are seeing it across the industry, our client base, and just what we're seeing is 8 to 10%. So they really called it. And so we're seeing an 8 to 10% increase over last year. Previously, it had been around 3 to 5% year over year. So it was kept artificially low. Another reason for that is the introduction of AI. Some people say, well, that's just a cost of doing business. Yes, it is. But you're going to need AI to help you identify trends. It's going to help you improve workflows. And you want your vendors to have the best technology for you to leverage that. You don't want your vendors to be on laggards in technology. You want them to be continuing to improve to help you improve the service to your employees.
I remember pre-COVID or pre all, this inflation, like we would get really upset to get the 3 to 5% increase
Right.
sometimes. And so to imagine that it's going to be that on, and then 7 to 9% on top of that
Mhm.
is definitely a blow. But yes, business is business. So, there are things that we do have to deal with and factor in. So it's always good to have someone on your side, on your vendor side, working
Mhm.
wise out there too. But with that, do you know of any specific strategies that your employers are kind of like putting in place to kind of help alleviate that cost at all?
Yeah, there's a number of things that we're seeing. So the pharma, I mentioned that earlier, is really getting, having your broker really look at that pharmacy and look at trends and see and get some transparency there. Sometimes there are those buying groups where your pharmacy provider actually owns the mail order, right? So you don't really know what you're paying for that. That's an area you can look at. Certainly leveraging those tech credits that are available with the carriers. They are willing to get participation. They're willing to pay for some of the benefits administration, certain, technology, whether that's implementation or ongoing. There's different ways to leverage tech credits. So those are some strategies. We are seeing an increase in ICRAs, and HRAs are kind of coming back. So that's a strategy that may be depending on your organization and in your population. Those might be some strategies worth considering. So they're kind of making a comeback.
Nice, nice. Okay, well, speaking of that, I think we've gotten through kind of like inflation strategies, all that good stuff, you guys, having from an HR tech space. But let's get into like the innovation side of things. So obviously, AI is like the big two-letter word that just has everyone in a frenzy right now. But from your specific stance and in your role and colleagues that you know within your role, how are you all like helping clients innovate in that space? And are there specific tools that we should really start to use and become more familiar with? Any type of like compliance support, or mostly I would say employee engagement? Because I have told plenty of people, and I've said it on plenty past episodes, in my opinion, we are no longer in an employer market, it's an employee market. And we've got to do it. Those are our clients, and we've got to do everything we can to help satisfy them. So what would be your take on that piece?
Yeah, I think AI is definitely, I mean, it's been around for a lot longer than people realize. I mean,
Yeah.
we've all been using AI. I mean, look at Google, right? I mean, it answers, it even says now, it even just identifies it. Hey, here's the AI answer. Well,
Yeah.
it's always there.
Yeah.
It's just summarizing the search now for you, which is great. I think you have to have a put some governance around it, how you want it to be used, document that, and make sure that your employees understand it. If you use it and you are quoting a source it just like you do any other research. Those kinds of things. There's no the term AI has been around, I want to say, since the 40s. And there's actually been some AI technology around since the 50s, if I'm not mistaken. It's somewhere around that. I used to know off the top of my head, but I've people don't ask me about it too often. But it uses it can just basically it just searches whatever it's given. So it's just like what we used to say, garbage in, garbage out. If you have good, clean data and you trust your data, it's going to pull that. So you don't need to, there's nothing to be fearful of. It uses vector technology, which I cannot explain, to search through so much more quickly than we can. And it doesn't have the emotional bias that we would. So you kind of need to use it hand in hand. So if you are keeping your employees first, which is great, you are able to leverage the data you have within your organization to spot trends that would take us months, years to identify if we ever did. And then you can put the human factor on top of that. So you are putting your employees first, and you are taking into those nuances that it's not really going to, AI is not really going to be able to identify.
Yeah.
If that, is
Yeah.
that, does that answer your question?
It does. It does. And I like that you threw in the human factor, you guys, like the human role. I always have to kind of
Mhm.
plug that idea.
Mhm.
That was not planned at all either. But yes, I keeping the employee first, I think, is critical and key, especially in this current climate. And I get it. There are some employers that just feel like, well, we can always find others, and you can. But once you invest in your population and you have someone there with that tenure, it is really more beneficial to pour into who's there versus having to restart the
Mhm.
process. And that saves a lot of money. If you're worried about inflation, that saves a lot on recruitment costs.
Oh,
So it's more beneficial for you to focus on where you're at now.
absolutely. Well, and there's a few other things that came to mind as you were saying that. it takes in most roles, it's 3 to 6 months before somebody's actually productive, right? And if it's a salesperson, it's going to be 6 to 12 months because they've got to get used to their territory. And there's some benefits administration, particularly is cyclical, right? So there's only a certain times of year that you're going to be able to contribute and
Yeah.
sell in that space. So there's that. And there's a shortage. Let's face it, there's not as many 20 and 30 somethings as there are 50 and 60 something. So that talent pool that you're talking about is limited. I mean, you can drive down the road anywhere and, hey, now hiring. Hey, hey, hey. I mean, you just can't. That talent is hard to find. And quite frankly, there's no substitution for experience. In that HR tech space, for example, HRIT, HRIS, whichever one you want to say, 3 years ago, the average person in that role had 10 years or less experience. Not bad. 2 years ago, it was right at 3. Last year, it was just under 3, depending on who you talk to, whether it was at Sapient, Insights, or SHRM. That is not much experience. Some of those people have never been through a systems deployment. Some of them may have never been through an annual enrollment. This is where we are. So you are absolutely right. You have to invest in your people.
Very true. I also think one layer of that is like, I tell a lot of clients, they'll interview someone, they'll think someone is, great, they'll pull them in, and the person ended up not knowing anything. And I'm like, okay, well, that's because if they say they know a system, they might have just had access to it, but never got into the system. They might have only used one little area, but not all the areas. Like, you need to ask very specific questions without making them work, but just say, like, from a payroll stance, hey, when you're processing payroll, what are the preview reports that you typically look at in this system, right? Because every system has a different, somewhat of a different name of each report. So it's the same in the HR tech space, right? And as Holly mentioned, HRIS, but also HRIT, like we're also going through this whole transition phase now as well. So it is really critical to just make sure you are training your people and then keeping them happy, because you really don't want to mess up your HR system. Like you really don't want to mess with that. Alrighty, so let's get in. I know I've kept Holly long enough, a great conversation. One last question I wanted to ask you. What piece of advice would you give, whether it be to someone looking to get into this career or a client, companies that are trying to get into heavy, strategy or get better HR tech, benefit plans? What would be your advice to anyone out there?
Start now. Go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
I would say one of the things is to document what you're doing now, regardless of when you're starting. So document everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. And, look to if you work with a benefits broker, find out what access they have to, an HR technology consultant, like someone like me. If they have that in-house, great. If not, you can reach out and, maybe we can point you in the right direction. There are, I certainly, as I mentioned, I'm with the USI, but I know lots of other consultants that could potentially help you through a process like this. And just, make sure you do a good, thorough discovery. And just like the interviewing process, this is like interviewing and going through a discovery process with potential vendors. It really should be employee centric. It should not be about the consultant. For example, we do not own HR tech at USI. We do not. And the reason we do that is we want to stay independent and recommend the best fit solution for our clients. We have lots of partnerships, which means we leverage our relationship with them to provide certain perks for our clients because of the volume of referrals that we give them. So it could be a discounted implementation. It could be, and it would be probably the most seasoned, experienced implementation team and ongoing service team. So things like that, things that benefit our clients. We are not forcing them into a specific ben admin or specific human capital management solution. That's just something to be aware of. Make sure you're working with someone that is engaged in your process, right? That they are actually meeting with you on a regular basis. And again, those are the things that I would recommend. And be realistic about your timeline. Like the 4 areas that I always tell my clients to work with is to think about these 4 buckets. It's your culture. Is this vendor a good cultural fit? Are you a leading edge person that has to have the latest? I always think of this, the latest, greatest iPhone. After you're going to get that first one, are you okay with your iPhone 11 because it still does what you need to do? Either way, it's okay, right? Your budget. Again, the iPhone situation could be a Maserati, could be a Mazda. both get you from point A to point B.
Yeah.
I just need to know because I don't want you to fall in love with that Maserati. Okay. How to get use of your time. Timing. When do you have to have this? Because some solutions take longer to implement than others. And that might be a knockout as well.
Holly, those are all great, amazing things. I would say definitely realistic about timelines is a real thing, right? Just because
Mhm.
I've seen so many implementations get pushed back way too many times. And so make sure there is no garbage in, garbage out. If you want to plan for an implementation, clean up your data first, before you do that. And I also like to say no system is perfect. You still need to own your system, even though you're paying for these big vendors. It's still on you. It's still your company, how you build it, how you use it. It could potentially be different than many other companies. So just make sure that you're getting guidance from your HCM providers, from your consultants, but also understanding that you need to be the knowledge base that helps build that, right? And bring that together. So, okay, well, Holly, thank you so much for joining us today. You guys, Holly will be, I will attach her to this post. So feel free to connect with her, send her a message. She comes with a great deal of experience. And as she mentioned, also has many different colleagues that she can refer as well. So feel free to shoot her any other questions. Don't bombard her with crazy questions, but definitely if you need some insight and use her services, feel free. But Holly, thank you so very much for joining us today. Really appreciate having you here and great insight. So hope we can catch up again soon.
I do too, Tiana. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, guys, I will be back in another couple of weeks with another great episode. Bye.
Bye.